In the darkness between the stars, a force long thought extinct has returned, a force that shakes the very foundation of galactic power. When humanity's massive battleship Nemesis emerges from the void, the universe is forced to confront a terrifying truth: their once unshakable rulers, the nebulates, are no longer the masters of the stars. Across the galaxies, fear spreads as old empires crumble and new powers rise. But what humanity seeks isn't conquest, it's a reminder of their forgotten strength. In this story, the galaxy will learn the true meaning of fear. It began as a flicker in the cosmic void, a faint, almost imperceptible signal that fractured through the endless expanse of stars. The Nebulate Empire, rulers of the known galaxy, were the first to intercept it. Their sensors, primed for centuries to detect the slightest whisper of external interference, caught the anomaly. It wasn't a warning, nor a call for assistance, but a cryptic message nonetheless. A directive followed: stay away. Initially, the Nebulite Council dismissed the signal as mere background noise, something lost in the endless currents of space. But curiosity, as it had done countless times before, stirred within their ranks. What began as skepticism quickly gave way to intrigue. No one could ignore the faint traces of a world, hidden far from known territories. The location wasn't on any map, not in the Empire's extensive archives, nor in the histories of countless civilizations that had fallen beneath Nebulite rule. It was as if this planet had emerged from the depths of forgotten space itself. Days turned into weeks, then months, as whispers of the unknown world spread across the vast Nebulate realms. The mysterious signal was no longer dismissed, but became the subject of endless conjecture. Was this world a relic from a time before their own dominion? Or was it a threat, one they couldn't yet comprehend? The Nebulates, once untouchable, began to feel the first tinge of doubt. Finally, the decision was made to dispatch a reconnaissance fleet. It wasn't merely a precaution, this was an expedition of unprecedented scale. Hundreds of warships equipped with advanced weaponry and countless crews were sent to investigate the signal's origin. The mission wasn't merely to observe, but to establish control. The Nebulates would not allow the galaxy to be thrown into uncertainty. Their empire had endured for millennia, and they intended for it to remain so. Weeks passed, and the fleet approached the planet. Through their sensors, they could now see the atmosphere, a thick, pale blue haze that cloaked the surface like a shroud. There were no signs of advanced civilizations, no cities, no glowing infrastructure to suggest intelligent life. Yet beneath the haze, something enormous stirred a structure, massive beyond anything recorded in Nebulite archives. The ships identified it as metallic, its surface darkened by centuries, perhaps millennia, of cosmic dust and radiation. It wasn't until they came closer that the true horror of what they had found became apparent. Scattered across the planet's surface were the remnants of other civilizations. Shattered cities, ruins, and lifeless wastelands told the story of a world that had once thrived, only to fall beneath an unknown force. In their desperation, the Nebulates sent one final communication back to the Empire, a warning whatever force had claimed this world was not to be underestimated. But it was already too late. The signal was traced back to a single vessel, one that loomed above the lifeless planet like a dark sentinel. The ship wasn't just large, it was vast, its dimensions far beyond any known design. The surface shimmered with energy, pulsating in patterns that defied understanding. This was not a creation of the galaxy's known powers. The ship Nemesis carried with it the weight of an ancient, forgotten history, a weapon of unimaginable potential. As the Nebulate fleet prepared to confront the unknown, they couldn't fathom the truth they were about to face. Humanity wasn't merely returning, they had never truly left. The galaxy would soon learn the meaning of fear. For centuries, the Nebulite Empire had ruled with an iron grip, their vast fleets and superior technology keeping the galaxy in check. They had spread across countless star systems, subjugating weaker civilizations and asserting dominance wherever they went. To the Nebulates, their empire was eternal. They believed themselves to be the apex of galactic civilization, the pinnacle of evolution, and the undisputed rulers of the cosmos. But all that certainty began to unravel the moment the Nemesis appeared. The loss of an entire fleet wasn't something the Nebulates had anticipated, let alone allowed. Their advanced sensors, capable of tracking fleets across light years, had pinpointed the Nemesis with alarming precision. And as the shattered remnants of their warships drifted aimlessly in the void, the message was clear. Their superiority had been questioned. A power they couldn't comprehend had returned from the void. A power that had once existed but had long been thought lost. Humanity had come back. The Council of Nebulites convened in their grand, glittering chamber, the massive screens displaying the haunting remnants of the fleet. They were leaders of empires, lords of systems and stars, but now, before these images, their confidence faltered. They had ruled with fear and authority, but this was something entirely different. The appearance of Nemesis wasn't just a threat to their military dominance, it was a challenge to their very existence. What could have done this? The High Overseer demanded, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. His fellow leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They had spent millennia ensuring no civilization could rise above them, no force could challenge their rule. Yet here was Nemesis, not just a ship, but a force. A reminder that they weren't alone in the galaxy's vastness. The reports trickled in, fragments of data from surviving Nebulite ships that had encountered Nemesis. They spoke of a vessel that wasn't merely advanced, it was otherworldly. Its core, they believed, bent reality itself. The graviton shield technology alone, capable of neutralizing entire fleets, was beyond anything the Nebulites could comprehend. And yet this was only the beginning. As the data was compiled, the truth became clear. Humanity hadn't simply returned, they had been lying dormant, hidden in the distant reaches of space, waiting. The Empire had long dismissed the legends of their disappearance as myths, as the fading echoes of primitive civilizations. Yet now those echoes had become the reality before them. The galaxy was no longer theirs to command. The more they learned about Nemesis, the more their arrogance began to crumble. The reports spoke of weaponry capable of obliterating entire star systems, of machinery that bent time and space itself. Humanity had once been scattered, fractured, but their resilience had transformed into something far more terrifying. They weren't weak. They were still strong, more dangerous than any force the Nebulites had faced before. Other civilizations, long subjugated by the Nebulites, watched from the shadows. They had been waiting for a sign, for a force capable of breaking the Nebulite stranglehold. The Fentauri, who had suffered for centuries under the Nebulite yoke, saw the arrival of Nemesis as a beacon of hope. If humanity had returned, it meant the galaxy wasn't lost to endless Nebulite dominance. And so, the fear spread. The once invincible empire of the Nebulites began to realize that their reign was over. The galaxy wasn't a playground for them to rule at will. It was vast, unpredictable, and now filled with forces they couldn't control. Humanity wasn't here to reclaim lost territory or establish dominion. They were here to remind the galaxy of the price of silence and of power long forgotten. The galaxy had always been a vast and mysterious expanse, filled with wonders and dangers that few could fully comprehend. The Nebulite Empire, with its dominance over countless star systems, had long believed they stood at the pinnacle of civilization. But the sudden reappearance of humanity shattered that illusion. Their history was a tale of isolation, a story long forgotten, but now the galaxy was waking to the truth. Humanity had been driven from the stars eons ago, cast into the void by forces they didn't fully understand. The records from their distant past spoke of a time when they had ruled countless worlds, when their technology was unmatched, their knowledge boundless. But something had happened, some great catastrophe that tore them from the galaxy, forcing them into the shadows of space. What exactly caused their disappearance remained a mystery. The Nebulites believed it had been their own downfall, a weakness that had weakened them and led to their exile. The Nemesis was the proof that humanity had never truly disappeared. Its return was not just a reawakening of their lost power, but a reminder of their once great influence. As reports filtered back to the Nebulite Council, the descriptions became more surreal. The massive vessel wasn't merely large, it dwarfed even the most formidable Nebulite dreadnoughts. Its surface shimmered with energies unknown to the galaxy, bending light and space itself. Sensors detected anomalies in the fabric of reality, signs that the ship wasn't merely traveling through space, it was altering it. The more the Nebulites learned, the less they understood. The Nemesis wasn't a relic of a bygone era, it was alive in a way no ship had ever been before. It was as if the ship itself radiated a consciousness far beyond the grasp of current galactic understanding. Theories arose: was it controlled by some ancient intelligence long forgotten? Or had humanity evolved beyond simple organic beings, transforming into something far greater? The data suggested that this wasn't merely a warship, it was a symbol of humanity's lost civilization, a remnant of a wheel lame when they wielded power the galaxy had never before known. Their technology wasn't merely advanced, it was ancient, built upon foundations of science and discovery long before the Nebulite's own rise. The weaponry they employed was so far beyond anything the galaxy had seen that it defied explanation. Graviton shields, capable of snuffing out entire fleets, were only the beginning. The Nemesis had weapon systems that could destabilize entire star systems, reducing them to nothing but lifeless husks. The Nebulites had always prided themselves on their control, on their ability to bend others to their will. But the reports from those who had encountered Nemesis revealed something far more terrifying. This wasn't a force to be subdued or conquered. Humanity wasn't here to reclaim their lost empires. They were here to remind the galaxy that they had been silent but never forgotten. The Fentari and Drenere, two species that had long suffered under Nebulite rule, now saw humanity not as a threat but as a potential ally. The Nemesis had made it clear the Nebulites were no longer the masters of the galaxy. The old powers had fallen and new ones had risen. The return of humanity wasn't a simple resurgence. It was the beginning of a new order. The galaxy began to whisper of humanity in awe and fear. Their arrival wasn't just a ripple, it was a tidal wave that had unsettled the very fabric of the cosmos. No longer were they a forgotten race, buried beneath millennia of obscurity. Humanity had returned, stronger than ever, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The first encounter between Nemesis and the Nebulite fleet came without warning. The vast armada, a testament to centuries of dominance, moved as one, their formation a perfect web of military precision. They had anticipated the confrontation, convinced that their overwhelming numbers and superior technology would be enough to crush whatever threat had emerged. But nothing could have prepared them for what they found. The reports began flooding back in fragments, frantic, distorted communications from the fleet that had arrived near the binary star system where Nemesis had been detected. The Nebulites had unleashed a full assault, their weapons blazing across the void, seeking to annihilate whatever force had dared to challenge their authority. But their weapons, designed to destroy entire star systems, fell silent before reaching their target. What followed was beyond even their comprehension. A massive energy field, vast beyond imagining, formed around Nemesis. It wasn't merely a shield, it was a wall of gravity and energy, an anomaly that distorted both space and time. The assault, intended to reduce the ship to nothingness, was obliterated before it could even land a blow. Entire fleets of dreadnoughts vanished as their trajectories spiraled out of control, sucked into the gravitational pull of Nemesis. Ships, entire squadrons, torn apart as if they had struck an impenetrable void. Then, in a single, terrifying flash, Nemesis retaliated. The weaponry that followed was unlike anything the Nebulites had ever encountered. A beam of pure energy, concentrated and devastating, ripped through the heart of the lead Nebulite dreadnought. The ship disintegrated, swallowed by the void, leaving behind only fragments of its crew drifting helplessly through space. The remaining ships, blinded by the display of power, hesitated. The very fabric of reality seemed to ripple around Nemesis, bending under the influence of some unimaginable force. Panic spread throughout the Nebulite fleet. Their once unshakable confidence began to erode. They had fought wars against the mightiest civilizations, defeated entire empires. Yet, none of those battles had prepared them for this. The Nemesis was not merely a vessel of war, it was something far beyond anything they had ever considered possible. The very idea that humanity, a species they had long dismissed as relics of the past, could possess such power was inconceivable. As the remnants of the fleet scattered, the dreadnoughts began to regroup, their commanders issuing desperate commands. But fear had taken hold. The tales of humanity's past, long dismissed as myth, were now all too real. The weapon systems of Nemesis weren't just advanced, they were catastrophic. The report spoke of energy discharges that could destroy entire star systems, of capabilities far beyond the scope of any galactic civilization. What struck deeper than the technology was the presence itself. The Nemesis wasn't merely a machine, it felt alive. Its pulse, its very existence, radiated a consciousness that transcended simple organic or synthetic form. It wasn't a machine meant to be controlled, but one that controlled. The Nebulates couldn't fathom the origins of such a force. Who had built Nemesis? What civilization had possessed such power and then vanished into the void? The Nebulite Council, shaken to their core, began to deliberate in secrecy. The loss of an entire fleet wasn't something they could simply brush aside. If humanity had returned, what else might they bring with them? The knowledge of the Nemesis was far too dangerous to ignore, far too devastating to underestimate. They began to question their own dominance, their own belief in eternal supremacy. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was no longer theirs. In the aftermath of the battle, whispers began to spread beyond the borders of the Nebulate Empire. Species once subjugated, civilizations long enslaved, watched from the shadows. The Fentauri and the Drenari, long crushed beneath the Nebulite boot, saw in Nemesis a spark of hope. They began to wonder, could humanity be more than just a distant memory? Could they be the force capable of breaking the chains that had bound them for centuries? The galaxy had always been vast, filled with mysteries and threats, but now that vastness was defined by one undeniable truth: humanity churned, and they had come with a power that none could ignore. The return of humanity through the Nemesis was more than a challenge, it was a warning. The Nebulate Empire, once an unshakable force that dominated the stars, was now forced to confront a power they didn't understand. Nemesis wasn't merely a ship, it was a symbol of a civilization thought lost, but now reawakened with forces far beyond the reach of the galaxy's established powers. The Nebulates had long considered themselves the architects of the galaxy's fate, but with the appearance of Nemesis, that belief was crumbling. For the first time in their history, the Nebulate Council found themselves questioning their own dominance. How had humanity survived in the void, hidden away from their rule for so long? What had allowed them to remain untraceable, even while the Nebulates expanded and crushed civilizations beneath their heel? Theories abounded. Some whispered of ancient superweapons, lost technologies humanity had perfected before their mysterious disappearance. Others speculated that they had stumbled upon forces beyond even the limits of known science, unlocking powers thought to be the realm of gods. Their arrogance had always been their greatest strength, but now, before the evidence of Nemesis and the wreckage of their fleets, that arrogance turned into dread. The galaxy wasn't as they had always believed. The cosmic order they had imposed was breaking apart. The ancient maps of their dominion no longer seemed complete. They had ruled through fear and control, but now they were no longer the masters. The Nemesis was proof of that. Humanity had returned, and with them the ghosts of their past strength. The surviving fleets of the Nebulite Empire couldn't shake the memory of the weapon that had annihilated their ships. The energy beam that tore through the heart of a dreadnought wasn't just destruction, it was something more. It was precision and power beyond what they thought possible. A force so overwhelming that entire fleets were reduced to drifting debris in an instant. The Nemesis didn't need countless ships, it could destroy them with a single, terrifying strike. Rumors spread of the ship's consciousness, of ascensions far beyond organic or mechanical. The reports painted a picture of a vessel that had been alive long before they had encountered it, older than the galaxy itself. The very existence of the Nemesis seemed to challenge the fundamental understanding of time and space. Some believed the ship was a remnant of a forgotten age, one where humanity had once ruled over stars that no longer existed. Others wondered if it was something far more sinister, an ancient force lying dormant, waiting to reawaken. But the Nebulates weren't the only ones affected by humanity's return. The Fentauri, a once subjugated species of fierce warriors, had been reduced to slaves under Nebulite rule for centuries. They now saw in the Nemesis the key to their freedom. The stories of humanity's past had always been distant myths to them, but the reappearance of Nemesis shattered those myths. If humanity had survived the void, then perhaps their legends were true, their lost strength wasn't entirely gone. The Drenari, another oppressed species, watched from the shadows, their own grievances and resentments boiling beneath centuries of subjugation. They too saw in Nemesis a sign that the galaxy was shifting, that the old powers were falling. Humanity, once thought to be a mere shadow of a long-lost empire, had returned with forces that dwarfed even the might of the Nebulites. In the corridors of power within the Nebulite Empire, desperation began to take root. The Council debated on how to respond to the threat. Should they continue to pursue Nemesis? Or abandon the chase altogether, retreating into the safety of their own borders? The question wasn't one of conquest, it was one of survival. Even as they deliberated, whispers of a new order began to emerge. In the far reaches of the galaxy, where hope had long since faded, new alliances formed. Species that had long been subjugated saw the return of humanity as an opportunity, a chance to rise, to reclaim their freedom, and perhaps to challenge the Nebulites once and for all. The galaxy wasn't a realm ruled by a single power anymore. It was fractured, divided, and now, on the brink of something far greater than anyone could have imagined. For the Nebulites, the Nemesis wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of an age they had long sought to suppress. And the fear that now gripped them wasn't one of conquest, but of extinction. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the aftermath of the first encounter with Nemesis unfolded, the Nebulite Empire began to crumble beneath the weight of uncertainty. For millennia, they had been the masters of the galaxy, enforcing their will through superior technology and overwhelming force. But now, the old structures of their dominion were unraveling. The fear of the unknown, the return of humanity, was spreading through every corner of their vast realm. The very foundation of their control had been shaken. Reports from those who had escaped Nemesis told of a force beyond their comprehension. The surviving officers spoke of a vast, ancient presence that wasn't just a ship, but something far more terrifying. The Nemesis seemed to transcend the limits of known existence. Its weapon systems weren't built to destroy, they were built to obliterate. The remnants of Nebulite ships weren't simply reduced to ash, they were erased, leaving behind only void where they had once been. In their desperation, the Nebulites turned to their most ancient relics, technologies long believed forgotten or relegated to myth. The Council sought knowledge from their oldest archives, digging through the histories of civilizations long since extinct. They unearthed tales of ancient superweapons, theories of forgotten empires, and the lost knowledge of a time when humanity still thrived. But none of it seemed relevant to the Nemesis. The more they searched, the more they realized their knowledge was incomplete. Some within the nebulae hierarchy proposed alliances with other species, those they had long oppressed, believing that perhaps they could rally support against the threat of humanity. But the response was far from what they had hoped. The Fentari and Drenari, who had once been their subjects, now looked upon humanity with a newfound sense of hope. They had suffered beneath Nebulite rule for centuries, but the return of Nemesis had rekindled dreams of freedom. These once subjugated civilizations no longer saw humanity as a relic of the past, but as a symbol of resurgence, a harbinger of their own salvation. The Council, however, dismissed their claims as mere rebellion. They believed the Nemesis posed no real threat to their dominance, at least, not yet. They were sure their technological superiority would prevail, that the might of their fleets would overwhelm anything standing in their way. But even their most fanatical supporters began to waver. The reports from surviving fleet commanders spoke of something far more troubling. The Nemesis didn't just move through space, it dominated it. Its very presence seemed to warp reality, distorting the very fabric of space-time itself. Gravity anomalies, energy fields that consumed entire fleets, and weapons capable of annihilating entire star systems all confirmed one thing: this wasn't a fight they could win through brute force alone. The old strategies, honed through centuries of conquest, were rendered meaningless before the overwhelming power of Nemesis. As their once unshakable confidence eroded, the Nebulites began to explore other possibilities. Perhaps they had underestimated humanity's survival. Perhaps their absence had been a ruse, a deliberate hiding from the galaxy's ever-expanding reach. Some believed humanity had evolved beyond their primitive origins, ascending to heights far beyond the limitations of organic life. They were no longer the primitive species that had once thrived, but something far more advanced, more dangerous, and more unknowable. Even with the full resources of the Empire at their disposal, the Nebulite Council couldn't contain their growing sense of dread. The Nemesis wasn't merely a symbol of humanity's return, it was a reminder of the galaxy's vastness and unpredictability. The Council feared that their empires, built on the foundations of fear and conquest, were crumbling before forces they didn't understand. Meanwhile, the Fentari and Drenari prepared for their own reckoning. They saw in humanity a chance to reclaim what was taken from them. The legends of a great human empire once thought lost now seemed plausible. Humanity wasn't returning to claim what they had lost, they were returning to reclaim what had always been theirs. The galaxy had always been vast, teeming with possibilities, but humanity's resurgence changed everything. The Nemesis wasn't just a ship, it was a harbinger of an ancient order reborn. The Nebulites could no longer pretend they were the masters of the stars. The fear of the unknown had returned, and this time it came from within. In the final moments of the Nebulite Empire's dominance, the galaxy had become a place of uncertainty and dread. The return of humanity through Nemesis had shattered the fragile order that had been maintained for centuries. The once mighty Nebulites now faced the reality that their empire, built on the foundations of fear and control, was slipping through their grasp. Their once unshakable confidence had been replaced by fear of a power they could neither understand nor overcome. The reports of Nemesis became more frequent, more disturbing. Ships lost in battles, entire fleets disappearing without a trace, and the evidence of a force far greater than anything the galaxy had known became undeniable. The Nemesis wasn't merely a symbol of humanity's resurgence, it was a harbinger of a new order. The Nebulites, once rulers of countless star systems, were no longer the masters of the galaxy. Their hubris had blinded them, and now they found themselves facing a reality where their reign was coming to an end. The Fentari and Drenari, once subjugated under the Nebulites, watched with a mixture of awe and hope. They saw in humanity's return a chance for freedom, a chance to break the chains that had bound them for centuries. The legends of a powerful human civilization that had once ruled the stars were no longer dismissed as mere myths. If humanity had survived the void, they wondered, what could they be capable of? Could they be the force that would help them reclaim their freedom? The Nebulites, however, refused to accept this shift in power. They clung desperately to the remnants of their empire, their belief in their own invincibility fading but not entirely gone. They continued to pursue humanity, driven by the fear that if they let go of their dominance, they would be swallowed by the very forces they had long sought to control. But even their mightiest fleets could no longer bring the certainty of victory. The Nemesis loomed in their minds, an ever-present reminder that they were no longer the masters of the galaxy. Desperation turned into recklessness. The Council, once wise and calculating, began to lash out. They deployed their most potent weapons, unleashing systems that had been dormant for centuries. The gravitational torpedoes, star-destroying devices, and fleets of dreadnoughts designed to assert control all were hurled toward Nemesis. Yet, none of it worked. The Nemesis didn't fight as they expected. It wasn't merely a ship that could be defeated through sheer force, it bent the rules of warfare itself. What disturbed the Nebulites most wasn't just the presence of the Nemesis, but the way in which it operated. The ship wasn't controlled by a crew, at least not as they understood it. It wasn't a vessel bound by the limitations of organic life or artificial intelligence. The report spoke of something far more ancient and incomprehensible, a presence that seemed to exist beyond the confines of known reality. Some believed Nemesis had become a consciousness of its own, far older than the galaxy itself. As their fleets fell, their control weakened, the Nebulite Council began to realize that humanity wasn't merely returning to reclaim old empires. They had returned with a purpose far beyond the ambitions of the Nebulites. If their technology could create something like Nemesis, then they were no longer a primitive species, but a force that transcended the very boundaries of existence. The Fentari and Drenari, once oppressed, found new hope in the face of this cosmic upheaval. They saw in Nemesis a power capable of shattering the chains of the Nebulites' dominance. But for the Nebulites, the future was far less certain. Their belief in their own supremacy had been their downfall, and now they were left to grapple with a galaxy that no longer answered to them. In the final moments of their empire, the Nebulites could do nothing but watch as the fabric of their dominion unraveled. The Nemesis stood as a testament to humanity's return, and in the silence of their despair, they understood one thing: the galaxy had changed, and they could no longer control what was to come. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure. The galaxy is vast, and humanity's journey has only just begun.